Hey, welcome everybody. We're talking about the Great Resignation with, oh wait, no, wrong show. We're going to talk about something more interesting. We've got Dr. Dave and Fred Brown here together. And of course, Tracey Zimmerman will be joining us in a little bit. I'm Ray Wong, and co-host and co-founder of DisrupTV. Got our awesome producer, Elle, and my awesome co-host and creator of DisrupTV, Vala Afshar. But with that, let's do a quick introduction, talk about like who you are, where you're calling in from, what are we talking about today. We got a double header. Dr. Dave, where are you calling in from? And, what are we talking about?
Thanks, Ray. My name is Dr. Dave Seftel. I'm an internist, CEO, and Chief Medical Officer of an antibody diagnostics company based in South San Francisco, California, called Enable Biosciences. And that's exactly what we do. We enable early and accurate diagnosis of difficult diseases, particularly neutralizing antibodies to COVID. Back to you, Ray.
Woohoo! All right, let's go to Fred. Fred, where are we calling in from? What are we talking about today?
Hey, Ray, I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Beautiful day out here today, and I've been working in COVID now for 18 months, but I've been in epidemiology, infectious disease for about 40 years. We've developed 6 vaccines, and they save about 5.5 million lives a year. And sadly, we have a chance to increase that number because of the challenges we're having with COVID.
All right, go blue. And all right, and I think if we see Tracey Zimmerman here, if she's here, I'll pop her in. If not, we'll drop her in a little bit later into the show. With that, do the honors, Ellen. We will kick off.
All right, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests, your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them during the show. It's my privilege to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research, best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business, and best-selling author of a new book, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Surviving and thriving in a world of digital giants. Congratulations, Ray, on an incredible launch.
Thank you.
Ray is also a regular television business and technology news contributor on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, and Cheddar. He's, in my opinion, one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wong, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar. He's the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. Executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet as well from this show. But hey, who do we have here today? We've got a double header, and it's a very, very interesting one. Very hot, timely topic, too. What's going on?
We have 2 extraordinary experts on our show. We'll start with introduction of Fred Brown, with business building experience in all aspects of healthcare solution. Fred advises businesses on how they can achieve profitable operations. He has over 15 years of international P&L operating experience, responsible top-tier consulting in healthcare strategy and growth, products and service development, and information system. Fred has had over $1.5 trillion of M&A experience. You can follow his company at Deloitte, Deloitte. Welcome, Fred, to DisrupTV.
Thanks, great to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Fred. And our second guest is Dr. David Seftel, Chief Medical Officer, CEO of Enable Biosciences. Enable Biosciences is a multi-award-winning antibody diagnostics company based in San Francisco. Dr. David is a seasoned clinician with a strong background in biotech and entrepreneurship. At Harvard Business School, Dr. David co-founded the Health Industry Club, which continues today and drives interdisciplinary innovation in the US and around the world. Dr. David has worked in a number of small startups, including helping to successfully pilot diagnostic products through 510K certifications. Dr. David has also advised and mentored numerous startups, including those in the UCSF Lean Launchpad program and those presenting plans to venture capital and angel investors. You can follow Dr. David on Twitter at DSEFTEL. Welcome, Dr. David, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much, Vala. And I can tell you, Fred Brown is a verified time traveler. Literally a month ago, he predicted exactly what is happening with the COVID pandemic, down to the month, down to the numbers, down to the incidents. And I'm thrilled to have him as a fellow Harvard grad, and he was on our show, the COVID-19 alumni show and he predicted exactly what was going to happen. So listen to Fred tonight. Listen to Fred today. Fred will tell you what's happening tomorrow.
You know what, Dr. Dave, this is so important, right? I mean, with time travel being, we're having the time travel capabilities we have today. I mean, we're at a critical junction in COVID-19. So, I mean, Fred, tell us, let's start with the state of the state on COVID-19. You went out to the future, came back. Where are we? How are we doing? And what can we expect?
And can you also tell us the Bitcoin price by December?
Yeah. We want that too. And some sports, I want to know who wins the Super Bowl too. But go ahead.
Oh, yes. Well, with COVID, we could be doing better. Sadly, we are going to probably have about 700,000 deaths by the end of this year.
More than like coronary. Oh my God, that's huge. So
we're already probably over that point if you look at excess deaths, but as far as measurable deaths that we contribute directly to COVID, it's going to be around 700,000, I think, by the end of the year, sadly. And we're probably going to, with this fourth wave, isn't showing any kind of opportunity to let up. We're at about a 50% vaccination rate overall, and that's pretty much the turning point. When you get over 50%, you start to see the impact of the vaccines. Until you get to 50%, especially with the R0 that's so high on the Delta variant, we're not going to see much of a change with a 50% vaccination rate. Different, however, in Israel and in UK, which also were reported rates, they actually show a decline because they're about 60%, and that's sort of the inflection point that we're at. If we can get just a few more vaccinated and get the children vaccinated, we'll be in a lot better shape to fight the fourth wave. But the fourth wave is going to go through, especially the South, badly through the rest of this, and then the whole country is going to have challenges in the fall, especially in November, December.
And you say especially in the South because of the low percentage of vaccinations in the South?
Yeah. There are at least two factors. The first is the low vaccination rate. The second is that people tend to congregate inside in the South when it gets warm because of air conditioning, and for those two reasons, we're seeing a lot of issues. The third sad reason is that some of the policies that some of these states are implementing right now, like mandating no masks, are probably sadly going to cause continued COVID. That really would not be what infectious disease experts or epidemiologists would recommend.
That's a great question.
I have to ask.
Trouble in Texas. Trouble in Texas. Trouble with Texas. This is the trouble in Texas.
I have to ask because I have two healthcare experts, and as you both know, next week is the largest healthcare conference in the U.S., HIMSS in Las Vegas. Today, August 5th, the average positive cases is at 834, 7-day average of Clark County, 834. Exactly a year ago, August 5th, 2020, the 7-day average was 888. So pretty much the same. Nothing's changed in a year. Of course, at that time that we didn't have vaccines. So what advice do you, by the way, almost positive rate of 19%, and only 51% of the population is vaccinated compared to, let's say, Boston, which is at 71%. Right. What advice, first of all, would you be attending? And what advice do you have for folks that are attending? Maybe I'll start with Dr. Dave.
I'd rather put my head in a burning oven.
Wow, okay. Well, don't hold back.
Okay, well, all right. Next.
You've given a new definition to Burning Man.
Well, the campfires and putting your head in the fire. I mean, you have a Delta variant that is 1,000 times more infectious. 1,000 times more infectious. People only have to be around for 5 to 10 seconds. Somebody sneezes within 6 feet radius, or coughs, or chokes on a pretzel, and
that gives new definition to a blast radius.
And the other key thing is that the Vegas hotels have not upgraded their HVAC to the CDC requirements. CDC have a wonderful website. If you want to know which building you should go into, go to the CDC website, and it'll tell you how many air exchanges per hour your building has to have in order to be safe. Because there are two critical variables in safety. One is masking, two is airflow. We can mask, but we can't control airflow. So why would you put yourself in an environment where the airflow is so miserable that you get congregation of these particles and almost guaranteed infection?
Yeah, that's exactly right, David. And and Las Vegas is hot, and so they're not circulating enough outside air in order to save money, and they're not the HEPA filter rates aren't high enough, and the exchange rates aren't high enough in all those hotels. I'm a regular attendee of HEPA. I go every year. I did not go this year, and I didn't go last year. And if you're going to go, for God's sake, wear a mask.
Wear 2 masks.
And wear 2 masks and make sure they're NIOSH N95 compliant. They're 80%
that seals completely. And yeah, and this goggles as well. Go like the aviator in that Disney movie.
Oh my! Well, hey,
it's stunning to hear 2 experts vehemently agree that it's really a bad idea. And I guess the delicious power. I mean, I don't. The community that represents science is holding the event.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunately, Val. I think a lot of people are tired. I mean, we've seen this COVID exhaustion, but the virus doesn't care if you're tired or not. Doesn't care if you're red, blue, or pink, or spotted. Doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. This is a lean, mean killing machine.
Yeah. If you're not vaccinated, it'll hunt you down and kill you. And what's challenging about this is it's an international event, and people are flying in from all over the world.
Yeah, they are.
Variant.
People want to see exactly. People want to see just how these variants spread. There's a phenomenal website called GISAID, where they agglomerate all of the genomic data, and they have wonderful, beautiful maps like travel maps that show exactly where the strain started and left, which airport it went to, and so on. GISAID. It's a nonprofit site. It agglomerates all the genomic data testing from all around the world and creates these wonderful graphs. Go to that site before you travel so you know where things are going.
And just to make it a little bit more remarkable, HIMSS is the informatics conference for healthcare, right? And informatics is enabling digitization. It's enabling virtualization of everything that we do. And what do? They all fly to Las Vegas. I don't do it, please.
It's a wonderful show. I have regularly attended. Incredible innovation, incredible thought leaders, incredible source of inspiration, because you leave the conference and you actually have a vision of what the industry is going towards. But yeah, everything you said.
Well, hey, let's talk a little about where we are, right? And I think that's important, right? I mean, we've got these mRNA vaccines, right? How effective are they, and why are they so effective? And really taking that along the line, if you've got the vaccine and you show up, or if you've gotten COVID-19, how effective are antibodies versus the vaccine, right? Because I think people want to know. I mean, just they don't understand, good, bad. They want to understand the gradations of gray, right? So what is the proportional response and what's the probability, right?
Fred is a vaccinologist, so I'll let him talk about the mRNA, and I'm an antibody guy, so I'll answer the antibody question.
There you go.
You go, Fred.
So the mRNA vaccines are incredibly effective. I've worked with vaccines for 40 years, and I have never worked on a set of vaccines that are this effective before in my career. They are, they're effective in 2 ways. First, they reduce transmission, and even with the Delta virus, we're looking at reduction of transmission by at least 60%, if not more. We're still working with real world data in that space. But as far as decreasing the onset of disease, which was the clinical endpoint that we used for all the vaccines, it is in the 94-95% of reduction versus a controlled group that doesn't get vaccinated. What's interesting about the current vaccine hesitancy that we have is everyone says, it went so fast, they must have cheated some way. Remarkably, the reason it went so fast is because the problem is so bad. If you are doing a vaccine and you can't find anyone who's sick, it takes forever. I've been in that situation. We got a great vaccine. We set up everything up in Sierra Leone, and the thing outbreaks in Liberia, and you go, no. and then you lose the season. But here, Johnson & Johnson actually said, we've got so many people who are getting sick that we can very quickly stop this trial remarkably quickly. In 2-3 months, we're done with 15,000 patients, 30,000 patients, 40,000 patients. We've tested this now in the clinical trial settings, with 75,000 patients, and in the real world with literally hundreds
of millions. I mean, it's the world's largest clinical trial in effect live. I mean, it's pretty wild, right? So,
yeah, I mean, the first time in my lifetime, perhaps, where the entire world was trying to solve a single problem, which is incredible. Dr. Dave, you're going to talk about.
I think the vaccines have accomplished a remarkable feat of engineering. However, the critical information is, did that vaccine work for you? And right now, vaccine effectiveness, which is different from efficacy. Efficacy is what they measure in a clinical trial. They follow these people, they study them, they draw blood from them, they make them anemic with the amount of blood that they draw for them. But real world effectiveness is what counts. How long does your immunity last? And that data is still emerging. And that data is going to drive what type of booster you get and when you get that booster. And
so you're definitely thinking boosters are happening. So,
pardon me?
You're definitely thinking boosters will be happening, right? So.
Because, and as you know, both Pfizer, Moderna, and other major manufacturers are already testing and getting their boosters ready. But the critical thing is determining who needs a booster and when. And the way you do that is by measuring neutralizing antibodies. Not all antibodies are created equal. Your body produces specific antibodies that can neutralize this virus. And your ability to have a reasonably high level of effective neutralizing antibodies is critical to your immunity. So what we do at our company, we've developed what we term a surrogate neutralizing antibody assay that the state of California has adopted as their sole assay for a surveillance program throughout California in order to study and find out for once and for all how many people are actually having effective immunity against the Delta variant, for example. And we believe this is a paradigm that has to follow for the rest of the country. The public health need to go out and provide people with testing free of charge, as they're doing in California, so that they can find out whether or not their vaccine worked, if it's still working, and when they need a booster and what kind of booster they need. So this is a critical piece of information so that we can take action based on facts, not based on circumstance.
And your 19% positivity rate, that means you're not testing enough. If you're at 19% positivity, that means and that's been a persistent problem throughout this. We just don't have the information, the data that Davis can collect immediately. We should have everybody being tested twice a week, not like they do in Europe for free. We're not doing that. That was the goal in August that CDC set up. We never made that, and we're not vaccinating enough.
Why don't we have the testing apparatus in place? I mean, you'd think that's basic public health. I went to some other school in Baltimore that studies public health, and we'd start with a testing program at the basics.
They love to collect data, but the actual process of getting the data is cumbersome. And remember that until very, very recently, to get an antibody test that was accurate, you had to go and get a needle stuck in your arm.
Yeah, you get PCR, so yeah.
Well, the current neutralizing antibody assays, you have to go and get a needle stuck in your arm. You have to take half a day to go and wait in line at Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp or wherever it is. So what we've developed is a home-collected dried blood spot kit that the state mails out. So people in the comfort of their home, they prick their finger, they put a spot down on a piece of paper, they mail it in, and we can run it. And we think...
Israel was doing this, and they now have kind of what they call correlation of protection. So they can actually say, if your antibody levels drop by this much, you need another vaccine. And so we are getting that data now. David can tell you more.
Absolutely. So we need to do what Israel has done. We need to do what makes sense from a public health perspective. And we're very gratified that public health in California has taken the initiative with funding, I might add, from the CDC. But the problem is that the states also run their own public health department. So we need to get the message out. This is not a political issue. This is a public health issue, but it's also an individual issue because there's a large population of people that are immunosuppressed. They have cancer, they have other pre-existing conditions, and the vaccines simply don't work that well with them. They need boosters earlier. And the only way to know when they need a booster is to monitor their neutralizing antibodies over time. Just like with your Fitbit, you monitor your pulse rate. Sure. You should be monitoring your antibody levels, and then you have an actionable number to say, I got to get vaccinated or I don't.
Wow.
And the number of breakthroughs we're having right now is kind of 1 in 5,000. And now with the Delta variant, it's going to go to 1 in 1,000. So we'll see a lot of breakthroughs that we can actually test and look at and understand what that correlation of protection is. As I said, the Israel study was sort of interesting. We found that, they found the people who are over 60 were, that didn't have the right antibody levels were 3 times more likely to get reinfected. So, and that's similar to the reinfection rates of the 18 to 40-year-olds in that study. So that's important. As we start to have more and more problems coming up with breakthrough.
Sure, sure. Now, in the U.S., 1 in 60 adult workers work for Amazon. Amazon employs over 1 million folks in the U.S. They just announced that you don't have to go to the office until 2022. And so my question is, do big companies need to have a chief healthcare officer on staff? Salesforce has a chief healthcare officer. We have a dozen medical doctors that work for Salesforce, guiding our policies, our culture, even our technology roadmap, because we're trying to help our clients safely have this office reopening phase that we started a few months ago, and now certainly we're re-examining. What are your thoughts in terms of big organizations, or maybe organizations of all sizes, but certainly big organizations, making sure that there is a healthcare expert resident on staff that can help influence policy?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a critical asset. You've got CFOs, you've got CEOs, you need to have a CMO for every major organization, because the health impacts not just productivity, but also the workflow and as I mentioned before, the critical thing is re-engineering those buildings. I think one of the reasons why Amazon doesn't want people to go back is because they're going to be updating the HVAC systems. They're going to be putting in UV filtration. They're going to be putting in all of these different things. Amazon has been very proactive since the beginning in terms of testing. And I think all corporations need to take a long, hard look at their physical plant as well as their employee management practices. I don't think we'll ever go back to open plan offices unless we have incredibly high throughput of airflow in those spaces.
Yeah, it matters what you do with your company, right? If you are able to distance and still be productive, then those companies really shouldn't be going back to work at all. If you're in the unfortunate situation where you have to have interaction, then you really need to protect those people who are constantly having interaction, having to use public transportation to get to office, be in an office or be physically, talking with people from the outside at all time. Those people really are the ones who are most at risk, and you've got to understand whether their personal risk levels are such that you don't want them to potentially contract the disease on the work site and die, because when that happens, that really does affect obviously the entire culture, and you don't want that to occur. So far, we haven't had too much of that happening, but as we see that, as David said, as the Delta variant starts to come in, this variant is very effective at infecting 18 to 40-year-olds. We're seeing the largest spike in that age group, and that's the productive, that's the most productive group of people that we probably have in the workforce, who are probably going to be most at risk. And you're going to see a lot of those people coming down with very serious illness, and if they're not vaccinated, and dying. So the chief health officer is critical for establishing the culture, the etiquette, the policy, and determining who under what conditions is working and where.
So Fred, since we found out you can time travel, I'm going to ask you, as you time travel into the future, do you see a nationwide mask policy or vaccination mandate policy?
Well, as David said, we're working state by state, and that's disappointing. I was disappointed the entire way through about the level of national support we've had for this COVID virus. The problem with the virus is it doesn't say, "Oh, I'm at the Michigan border, I'm going to stop now." It crosses the border into Ohio and vice versa, and that's a problem that we're having. And so I don't see a nationwide anything with COVID at this point, and sadly, I don't see it happening by the end of the year either, in spite of the fact we're going to go through a fourth.
But jumping in real quick, I'm kind of curious. Is density as a business model over? I mean, we've had pandemics, we've had flus. The contrarian question would be like, this is going to keep happening. Well, tons of different types of variants. We just, the countries that haven't figured out how to live with the virus are the ones that are going to fail economically, right? So what do people do? Do we all shut down? Do we turn into Australia where they can't get to work because no one has a vaccine? What happens, right? So, we got vaccines as the front line defense. We got masks as a second line defense. We got therapeutics on the back end in case you get sick. What's required so that we actually get back to work? Because the proportional response, there's got to be a proportional response. You can't keep infinitely spending money on this because it's never going to be over. That's the nature of disease. That's the nature of life. What do we do? At a rational level in your trips going forward into the future, what did we do?
Absolutely right. Unfortunately, right now, proximity is pathologic. But there is a silver lining, and I know Fred will talk about this. and that is that we are looking at a new generation of pan-coronavirus vaccines. Pan meaning all coronaviruses. So there are a number of vaccines in development that will provide protection against the entire family of coronaviruses. And that would be the silver bullet for corona. And that would buy us some time to work on pandemic preparedness for other viruses. So that's the hope. That's the hope and the prayer that we will have a universal vaccine that generates sufficient immunity to knock out the entire family.
Yep. And it's important to act fast. One of the problems we've had is we're just not acting fast enough. If we'd acted faster on a national basis with COVID, we could have actually probably eliminated it. Unfortunately, we didn't really, with the exponential growth curves, we didn't understand when it was coming in. We didn't have a test to determine who had the disease. We didn't. We still are 6 months behind the WHO, which isn't known for very much speed, right? It took us 6 months to say, 6 weeks to say, that Delta variant looks pretty bad. They knew that it was a problem 6 weeks before we did, and we're still looking at data 6 weeks old to determine our health policy, and that is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Now, question though on that
is they didn't listen to Fred Brown early enough.
Well, hey, no, I looked at your presentation, vaccines versus variants, and I was like, okay, I mean, I get the exponential growth curve. I know that, variants are multiplying at a rate faster than we could ever come up with vaccines, right? So it's a very, very different game. It's not man on man. It's like, you're playing safety defense, like zone defense to make it work. But the challenge really is, I mean, in the other countries where the Delta variant was spreading, the vaccination rates were lower, and they weren't using mRNA vaccines in the same rate, right? So would you say that, you wouldn't know what that spread's going to look like, what curve looked like? So being 6 weeks late was really because we still didn't put in testing infrastructure, right? And the question is, why haven't we put in testing infrastructure? I mean, one group would blame it was the politics of the previous administration. The other group is like, okay, we're in this current administration. Why still don't we have testing infrastructure? You think we'd figure this out by now? This is basic public health. Like, what's holding us up as a society from doing that?
Well, from my perspective, we're making steps, but we aren't making steps at a national level. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And ultimately what we need a testing czar for this country. So I call out to our friends in the Biden administration, we don't just need a vaccine czar, we need a testing czar, somebody who can implement a policy and enforce that policy, because that is what will get us out of this pandemic, get us out of every other pandemic, being able to understand, to predict, and to prevent based on actionable information.
Plus, we're not even testing at the border. I mean, the border's wide open. I mean, it's like we're all protecting ourselves and we're letting all these people in that are not even being tested. I mean, that's even worse. We got millions of people going all across planes, across trains, buses, into places that are supposed to be safe.
Well,
right?
I think you touched on an absolutely critical point, right? In Israel, it's not good enough just to show that you're a vaccination card. You have to produce a lab result showing your antibodies were positive at a certain level. Wow. And we believe that should be the standard. Anybody can forge a vaccine card, but you have to be able to produce a verifiable proof that you had enough antibodies to protect you. Then you should be allowed to travel, and that should be universal. People shouldn't be able to travel from India, or from Guatemala, or from the UK, or from Venice, or whenever, unless they produce proof of vaccination and proof of neutralization, in my humble opinion.
Fred, your thoughts? You're on mute.
Fred, you're on mute, sorry.
And most countries, by the way, many countries are doing this. For example, Hong Kong, the UK, they all have, if you try to travel internationally right now, you'll get a sense of just how buttoned down these countries really are. They are requiring quarantining on both sides of the travel. They're requiring one or two tests, during the course of your travel, and when you arrive, and even after you've arrived. You're talking about between 14 and 21 day quarantines on average for many of these countries when you enter. So it's quite complicated to travel internationally, and for a good reason. But interestingly, everyone who travels internationally says, "Boy, it's such a relief to get back to the United States. It's so easy here." But the truth is, we pay for that. We pay for that.
Yeah.
Fred, I know Deloitte, globally advises the largest, most successful, fastest growing companies in the world in terms of adoption of emerging technologies like machine learning, Internet of Things, quantum computing, blockchain, and so on and so forth. We've had experts come on the show and said the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation in business as much as a decade. For example, e-commerce, contactless payments, and so on and so forth. Can you give a sense of what's the sense of urgency as you talk to CEOs, board members, chief information digital officers, in terms of the pandemic's impact in bringing what may have been a 2026 IT roadmap into 2021?
Well, that's a great question. I can't talk for Deloitte. I promised I wouldn't talk as Deloitte, but I'll talk for myself, having been in the space. And you're right. There are two things that are happening. The first thing is that the acceleration, especially, for example, in healthcare, where Dave and I both work, we're talking about large integrated delivery networks who used to do 10 or 12 visits a day across 10,000 physicians are now doing 70% of their work remotely. We're looking at, and so that's an example in one industry, and that's true about education as well. Most of the campuses in the country that are privately run are insisting that people be vaccinated, and they also still allow and have remote learning capabilities and are expanding those. So the first thing that's happening is that you're getting a much faster demand for those services, and the supply is there. The other thing that's happening is that we were on a growth curve already, and that accelerated the growth curve. So if you think about the fact that 2 years can sometimes mean this much growth, and 2 years can sometimes mean that much growth, we were on the accelerating path already, and that because those 2 years really is going to fundamentally change industry. I think for the rest of our lifetimes, in terms of what we're able to do remotely, what our expectations are for services that are remote, what people are expecting from the workplace, what kind of support they're expecting, what kind of partnering. And you mentioned this idea about bringing people together. I think instead it'll be much more a networked virtual environment that brings people together with common interests like we're doing here, rather than having to get everyone together in a physical space.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, let's get to the technology being used to detect antibodies on the surveillance front. Dr. Dave, tell us a little bit more about how Adap works and why it's more effective in reducing false positives and false negatives. This is part of that, understanding your antibody, for your viral loads, testing portion as you come through, and being able to do that more quickly. How does Adap work, and what is it?
Adap is a completely unique testing technology. It stands for Antibody Detection by Agglutination PCR. And it was developed by two brilliant young PhD students at UC Berkeley and Stanford, Peter Robertson and Jason Tsai. They have figured out a solution to a 44-year-old problem, and that is, how do we detect antibodies with incredible sensitivity using the same PCR that we use to detect viruses? And they did it by creating these tiny nano-sized DNA barcodes. Just like you've got barcodes on anything in the supermarket, and you go through the supermarket checkout, it's very quickly and easily to log that very accurately. They created these tiny nano-sized DNA barcodes and the technology to attach them to antibodies. That's the fundamental of Adap. It's a patented technology owned by the University of Berkeley, and that we are exclusively licensed and deploying. And we are deploying it for CDC, State of California, Mayo Clinic, Stanford, UCSF, etc. All because we're able to have a test that has 10,000 times increased sensitivity. What does sensitivity mean? We can detect a disease a lot earlier, because the moment your body's exposed to any kind of bad bug, it starts to produce antibodies. But the antibody levels ratchet up over time. And if you can detect it at week 1 and you can treat that person at week 1, you can save all the problems further down the line. And that's why sensitivity matters. But specificity also matters. You've got to be able to make sure you're actually measuring what you're looking to measure. And the barcode makes sure that you're only measuring a COVID antibody that you're looking at in question. And the test that we're deploying for California is a multiplex test. In other words, we can measure these neutralizing antibodies against alpha, beta, delta, epsilon, all in a single tiny dried blood spot sample. And that is why the CDC and the state of California has exclusively contracted with us, because we can do something that nobody else can do easily and accurately.
And accurately, what does that mean in terms of reducing false negatives, false positives?
The false positive and false negative rate is incredibly low because we have this barcode. If you're going to the supermarket, check out how many times is the barcode not read right.
Right.
And we built these barcodes. They're completely synthetic pieces of DNA. They do not exist in nature. We make them so that they're literally, robotic pieces of DNA. And we run them on robots. That's the other thing. We have these very large Hamilton robots that run the whole test. So there's no opportunity for human error. Sorry, go ahead.
And that David's point about the early detection is so critical with viral diseases, because in 3 to 5 days the virus is already replicating hundreds of millions of times in your body. So if you can detect that process earlier and stop that exponential curve earlier with drugs, and almost every test we've conducted in clinical trials says if you can get this drug to this patient earlier, it'll work great. Unfortunately, we're finding out that by day 10 or day 15. When we apply the drug, it's the virus has already completely overcome your body, and you're already in pneumonia phases.
Absolutely. So if folks want to learn more about it, you can go to calscope.org, which is the state of California CDPH Public Health Department's site, and it'll tell you a little bit about the program. Other states that want to get involved, you can contact the California Department of Public Health and contact us. The program is funded by the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. So potentially, if other states want to do it, we'd love to help.
And I was working with OWS, and we were trying desperately to get David's tests, given out to everybody who got a shot, everyone who had a vaccine. And as David said, every state is different. So California did that. And we now are watching what's going on at a population level with the decline and waning of the diseases. And it changes. Everyone is different, as David said. Your immune system are quite different. If you're immunosuppressed, if you're older, all those things make a difference. And so we need to watch that on a population level. And David's test is nice because it comes in a piece of paper. You send it out, you give people, and you send it back in, and you get your result. Not one of these where you've got to go, as David said, and go to a special lab site. So it was a fabulous opportunity, and we've missed that one too.
The Olympics would have been a great one too, as well.
Sending out 200,000 kits, so it's a very small portion of the entire population. Yeah. And ultimately, what we'd like to see people, individuals, empowered to test themselves. It's an inexpensive test, so we're looking to deploy it hopefully going forward. And
Beijing may be the opportunity, right? Beijing 2022. The Chinese are already shutting everything down. They're getting ready now for Beijing because they saw what happened in Tokyo.
Yeah, no, they definitely see that. Hey, quick shout out. Saul Kaplan says hi, Fred. I have no idea why. He says hello. Great exploits.
Everything he knows.
Saul is amazing.
Saul's an old friend of ours.
Saul is one of the great guys in the world. He's running the whole state of Rhode Island and the rest of the nation. So
he's one of my mentors. He's amazing.
So
that's not true. He taught me a lot. I shouldn't say that. What did we joke about it?
I think Fred has more fans than the Kardashians.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think so, yes.
And deservedly so.
Yes.
Deservedly so.
You're both doing incredible work. It's an honor to have you on our show.
No, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Any last advice for folks that are looking at return to work, thinking about policies going forward, hosting a conference or event? We have our conference. It's a small one in Half Moon Bay. What are things we should be thinking about? In October, October 25th. So what should we be thinking about? What should we do to keep everybody safe? So,
well, Half Moon Bay is a great place to do it because there's always wind. There's wind. Have it outdoors, have it windy. Button up, but have it in a windy environment and make sure that people are all vaccinated. Do not allow anybody who's not vaccinated into that group. And if you can, make sure that they have an antibody test as well.
Should we test out your testing at our site?
That's another option. That's definitely another option.
Really? I like that. As someone who's planning to attend, I would say yes.
There you go. Antigen testing on site. Antigen testing on site.
Do as much as you can in large crowds outside if you can do it. As David said, it's all about masking. It's all about vaccination.
Will Delta have gone through by then and blown by, because it seems to be moving in and out very quickly?
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Sadly, I think you might find that not October so much, but November. I think you're doing it at a good time of the year. By November, I think it gets challenging.
So we're
Grab
trying to
that
make the
window
flow.
now. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Well, we're here with Fred Brown, consultant at Deloitte, and Dr. David Seftel, Chief Medical Officer and CEO of Enable Biosciences, getting a really good update on what's happening on the COVID-19 situation, vaccines versus variants, what to watch out for, and more importantly, this new world of Adap and testing that's popping up there with antibody testing. Thank you so much for being on the show, and hope to have you back.
It's our pleasure, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. It's great.
Thank you, sir. Terrific. Wow, that was just
Mind-blowing.
mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Of course, when we
Amazing.
talk about mind-blowing, it's our next guest. It's our privilege for Ray and I and the Disrupt community to have Tracey Zimmerman, President and CEO of Robots and Pencils. Tracy brings over 20 years of expertise in marketing, technology, and strategic leadership to a role as President and CEO of Robots and Pencils, a digital innovation firm that helps organizations around the world use mobile, web, and frontier technology to transform their businesses. One of the smartest companies I've had the privilege of working with, hands down. At Robots and Pencils, Tracy focuses on finding ways to grow the business while improving operations and benefits of the company's talent and clients. Tracy began her career as a software developer and an analyst consultant for multinational companies across financial, education, and medical sectors, including Bank of America and Siemens Healthcare. Tracy has held several senior leadership roles in marketing operations, experience, and innovation in higher education industry. She's a great follow on Twitter at TR Zimmerman, Zimmerman. Welcome, Tracy, to Disrupt TV.
Thanks, Val. Thanks for the welcome. And I often retweet both of you guys. So I think this is pretty synchronous for us to retweet each other. So really happy to be here and nice to see you and certainly admire the company you work for as well.
Thank you.
Hey, we're really excited to have you.
You're a great partner. Yes.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you here. One of the things interesting, as a good segue from our other segment is this concept of digital HQ. It's picking up, right? What's up? Digital headquarters. Everyone's talking about it. What's happening? Is it, tell us a little bit about what it is. Let's start there, right? And then, of course, how people are getting there, how people are building that to get to this digital HQ.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Digital HQ is one of the things I feel like, we started talking about it early on because Robots and Pencils was growing really rapidly. We were growing across multiple offices with multiple clients. So we had to very quickly shift from, kind of single office location where most of our client work was local to rapid growth, and you're spread out across Canada and the US, et cetera. So it's something where we got in there early, and it's really been awesome to see companies figure this out. I've actually been impressed with how much people have figured out, to be honest. But I do think that there's a real opportunity. I mean, just to kind of segue to the conversation you guys just came from about COVID, like we, as leaders, we don't know what to expect, but I can tell you this, like digital obviously isn't going anywhere, and we need to be really prepared not to see the time that we've reacted to over the last year plus as, okay, we're going to Band-Aid this till we get back to running things the way we were before. The kind of digital first has to be here to stay. I do believe this was an acceleration of a trend that was already happening anyway. But as you guys know, many companies do not embrace change. And so this the involuntary digital transformation is still rolling through.
The products and services that Robots and Pencils produce is world-class. When you go to your homepage, you see all these incredible clients that you have, some of the biggest, fastest growing companies in the world. So you, as the CEO of Robots and Pencils, engage with all these business leaders that are trying to adopt a digital first mindset, recognizing this decentralized effect the pandemic has had in the business world. What are the pitfalls? Like, what's holding them back? What's the common obstacle for these business leaders to create and cultivate a well-oiled digital headquarters, in the cloud?
That's a great question. I think there's the top two things are really hard to pick what's more important. But I'll start with saying thinking digital first. That comes with culture, processes, communication. If you're not good at it, just admit you're not good at it. A lot of companies aren't. I mean, actually, the leadership team is the crowd at the top. We're old and most likely to not know it well, right? So go find the people in the organization who are good at it and give them opportunities to help to contribute and help to level you up. I mean, if you're not already doing this, you're behind. I again, like I said, I am encouraged because I think a lot of people are doing it, but to really start to enforce that Like, it's like when people were talking all the time about mobile first. This is digital first, process, people, communication. And very related to making that successful is there has to be an all-in approach. There has to be participation, from the leadership and a consistent, not sort of a like, oh yeah, we're doing this stuff because we have to, or my boss said we had to, or guys, just post the stuff and that's what we're trying to do until we get back together. We really have to be bought in. And we'll also kind of warn the leaders, something to be prepared for. It's both an opportunity and a danger, which is once you start talking on these platforms and you're out there and you're running digital, everyone's going to talk to you. And you will hear from everybody in the organization. And that represents a tremendous opportunity. Like Rita McGrath talks about trying to hear things from the edges, right?
Yep.
Meaning the people that are actually talking to your customers, the people that are actually, I always say, I don't really work at Robots and Pencils, right? I mean, I don't do work at Robots and Pencils. So there's this opportunity to hear from people, but it also can be very overwhelming, especially for, larger companies or leaders who are used to getting a lot of information filtered up to them. Yeah. So I know people have probably been dealing with this over the last year plus, but recognize it as an opportunity.
I've got 60,000 people slacking to Mark. It's amazing the bi-directional volume from like an intern who just joined and just recognizes our founder is accessible, and and I see it, and it's but you know what it does do? It allows you to see and hear good ideas in the fabric of your organization. It's not the best titles that are winning; it's the best ideas. Yes. I mean, it's noisy. But if you can, guide through the rapid waters, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, we definitely see that, and it's an important part, right? Because that signal intelligence is really what's creating these business graphs, right? And it's really important to be able to exert, the signal and extract that signal from the noise. But you need more signals, right? And if you don't have the signals, you never get to the ideas, you never get to those areas. And that's definitely one of the big signals that we keep seeing right now is really this need for reskilling, the need for talent. We were just on a call this morning with like 20 CIOs, and the number one issue was we can't find enough people. I just left a organization that has 480 open headcount for IT. I mean, just IT alone, and they can't find the right folks. And so as part of this digital HQ and part of that moving, I mean, Tracy, one of the things you're talking about is really this need for reskilling, retraining. Let's talk a little bit more about that, and where are we in that state?
Yeah, I mean, I actually talk to a lot of CEOs. I'm in YPO, and the number one, behind either explicitly or implicitly, the number one blocker to growth and capturing opportunity is having the right people and in technical skills and in lots of other skills. So I definitely think there's a huge opportunity there. It's another thing where it's like, hey guys, we should have been doing digital for a while now, so you weren't slapped so hard by the pandemic. Very similar, like we knew this was coming. It's been an issue. And now because actually economic growth and shifting and acceleration, it's hitting us harder. So I have a few thoughts about this. One is that I do think sometimes companies are being lazy. And there are tons of talented, hardworking people out there but they may not fall into the traditional mold. I really think that as leaders and in our organizations, we need to expand our horizons and our openness to how we identify talent. Again, we've known about this for years. The good news is I don't think that organizations need to solve this on their own. I actually don't think they should. There's lots of companies from the startup ecosystem to the traditional institutions or continuing ed within traditional institutions, boot camps, et cetera, who are building great flexible programs. And I think companies can come alongside those, invest in some of those programs, and make this successful. I think this is a forcing factor. Companies have been, like I said, I shouldn't say lazy, but it kind of is true. Like they bring people in, they bring them in on credentials. We're not great at hiring. We're not great at knowing who's successful in our companies. We're just not. I think I am at Robots and Pencils, but most companies aren't. And so we'd say, hey, let's get somebody with this education credential, give them some time, and hopefully it works out. Doing it this way forces you to say, what do I really need in this role to have somebody be successful? The answer, MBA, is not an answer. We need to get to what are the skills, what are the capabilities of this person? Because once you understand that, you can do more of a skills gap analysis and understand, hey, I'm going to bring you into this role, Ray. When you join my team, like you have these 4 or 5 things which are critical to success, and I need you to take a boot camp and learn to do some Python development. Just bringing up something that you may not know, Ray, because you seem like you know a lot of things. And then have some accountability around that. And then when you bet with those people, I actually think you start to solve for loyalty because people feel you've invested in them, and then it helps with retention, and those people are also going to often be creative at spotting other talent that are outside the box. But we have let it kind of hit a crisis point before anything was done, which has been good for the growth of my business.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Well, at one point, Robots and Pencils was named the fastest growing startup in North America. I think you had achieved 5,000% growth, which is hard to wrap my head around.
Right.
And the design and the beauty of your products absolutely stands out in the market. So are you willing to share like maybe CEO secrets in terms of how you recruit these incredible engineers? As an example, we had Aaron Levy on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said for design hires, we only go on the consumer side. And he's a B2B box, but he's only hiring consumer-oriented designers. Yeah. So he shared some advice in terms of how you can look beyond the traditional swim lane to bring talents into box. What are you doing to attract the best and brightest and continuing to grow Robots and Pencils?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great observation. I agree. Bringing that consumer design thinking into the enterprise. I mean, we're all people using technology. Nobody was like, oh, well, now I'm at work, I want a crappy user experience. You know, let's lower the bar. So I think that's a great tip. I think for Robots and Pencils, I mean, one, I think we attract the talent based on our culture. There are really no shortcuts. Unfortunately, it takes time to build it and create something that attracts the type of people that you want to be at your organization. And hopefully it will also repel the people from the organization that aren't signed up for your mission and don't want to be part of your culture. And so we think a lot about, you know, creating really my responsibility in the organization is to create an environment where my team can do their best work. You know, and people that are good at what they do, they value that a lot. And the devil is in 4,000 levels of details around that in terms of things like how we schedule meetings, what we expect with teams, how we compensate people, how we promote people, how we communicate to people. You really have to start by saying I believe starting with the type of people that you want to attract and then building your organization around that. And methodology wise, how you do that is talk to the people that work at your company that you want more people like. Like it seems obvious, but just because it's obvious doesn't mean it happens. Sure. And then do like a kind of collaborative process with your team, because if your team feels part of the process, which we do this a lot at RMP, and again, it's another humbling experience, but if you can listen and you have the responsibility as a leader to sort of aggregate the feedback, and you still have to manage the, you know, profitability and all the other goals of the business. And then, you know, I think if you consistently communicate with the team and they feel like part of the journey, that will help with talent retention. As far as hiring more people, the majority of our hires continue to come from talent referrals. And then the ones that don't, we're relying on our talent and their really happiness at RMP to spread the word. So even, you know, through our interview process, people are like, well, this is why I came to RMP, because this is what the company's like. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of shortcuts. I do think where you can introduce more structure, like I said, about the skills and really understanding what success looks like, you can bring in less senior talent and give them a chance. I would say, especially for the enterprise, you almost have no choice. It's really hard for a company like mine that's built around talent success to recruit and retain people right now. It's a very challenging market. For a company where you're, you know, tech's sort of an afterthought, we don't know, why are these people wearing that? Hey guys, get back in the office. What are you guys doing all day long? Why do you need so many like GitHub licenses? Why are you always changing? The culture, it's going to be really hard to bring people in, but if you can bring in less senior people, one of the most effective things I think companies do with us is they partner with us, and we'll help to bring in some seniority in some of our practices and help adjust the organization to that. And then also mentor and train, especially if you have, you know, promising talent in different roles or younger talent that they don't necessarily have the skills, help to mentor and develop them. And that can be a good compromise and a bit of a shortcut. 480 is a lot though, Ray.
It's a really, I mean, yeah, they're short a ton. They're short a ton of people. But hey, let's talk about post-pandemic behaviors real quick before we lose you. A lot of things happened during the pandemic. You know, we Val was talking about some of these changes as well. Buy online, pick up in store, the way we actually pre-order things. I mean, you go to a restaurant, you pre-ordered everything before you showed up. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, they actually know their inventory, they know their stock, they know exactly, how much to order.
They're not even handing out menus. You just scan a barcode. It's all digital.
I mean, it's completely changed.
Right.
What stays? Like, when you talk to your clients, your top clients that are thinking about this, what stays? What goes away? What comes back to normal? Or the old days?
I would say
we don't even know what normal is.
Yeah. The old days. Yeah. I think the old days are gone. I would just say table stakes have increased significantly. Just as a reminder, customers don't and never have cared if things are hard. They expect things to be easy. They expect them to be integrated. They don't care if your e-commerce database is in one place and your store inventory database is somewhere else. Like, I hope you guys saw that during the pandemic, because no one cares. And the thing that's difficult is, it's never been easier to switch brands, right? People are actively working, to make the user experience better and better and easier and easier. And these platform players are out there like Shopify to help increase the size of the marketplace. And so, I think that's here to stay. The consumer expectation of, I expect online and offline to be the same. They already have a digital first mentality. Yep. And then when you do have an in real life experience, you better have a story. You better have a reason that people buy from you. Hopefully it's not just price, because that's hard to compete with. And kind of capitalize, kind of like just like retaining your talent, retaining your customers. Go talk to them, find out why they stay with you, find out what they hate. It's going to hurt to hear from them, but it hurts more to have them just walk away and not understand why. And get more agile and address their concerns, and then come back to them and show, tell them that they are, and let them help to spread the word. But yeah, I think that definitely that integration is not changing. I don't know how people will stay in business unless they're very small and very specialized and very high end, without having, really being very digitally focused.
Customers don't care what department you're in, what channel you're in. I mean, customers don't care. You expect
and never have.
And never have, really. Absolutely.
And never have.
I have a comment and my final question. My comment is, I recently spoke to a CEO who's going through extensive digital transformation of his company, and he described RMP's culture as a culture of generosity. He explicitly said that you guys always consistently deliver more than what he expects, and it's just built into your culture. So kudos to you and folks that you surround yourself with, because I think at this time where we're all struggling, having a culture of generosity, doing more than people expect, is what will differentiate businesses. And so I was really happy to hear that from a CEO. And my question is, you're in front of CEOs all the time, and I'm sure they're like, Tracy, help us build our digital transformation playbook, because you're the 5,000% growth, successful, incredible clients. So obviously, whatever you're doing is working and working really great. What do you tell CEOs that are asking you to help them shape their playbook? How do you engage with CEOs when they, knock on your door asking for help?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for the very kind words. The first thing to understand is, I always say to them, what are the goals of your business? Like, digital is not a separate thing. You've got to integrate it into your business. So I'm like, what are your business? What are your challenges? And then we can help through the power of digital to impact those key metrics. And sometimes we can come up with, full digital only offers. But for most businesses, they're not touching the power of digital. Digital's not a department, whether you have a chief digital officer or not. The goal should be integration of digital throughout the business for productivity, for talent satisfaction, as well as for new business offers and growth. So I would say my first question is, well, what are you trying to do in your business? And then we can come back and put together a roadmap based on return on investment. In that regard, it's no different from anything else you do in your business. It just needs to be really integrated and bought in. If the CEO is asking that, that's a great sign. They're getting bought in.
Right. Right. That is, more and more board members are asking. I've attended several board meetings in the past several months, and it's amazing how are we using machine learning? Do we have chatbots in our future? How much of the work can be done on our remote control for life? And it's kind of cool to hear board members that are not technical, by the way. Of course, I think they're all technical in some way, but they're not engineers, they're not developers, and they're asking really good questions. So it's definitely a sense of urgency that I haven't seen before. Go ahead.
Totally agree, man. Form follows function, and getting the businesses right and getting the governance structure is so important more than ever, right? I mean, it's having the wrong governance is going to cost you, especially making the long-term investments that are required. So, but hey, Tracy, thank you so much. We're here with Tracey Zimmerman, President and CEO of Robots and Pencils. You can follow her at Twitter on Zimmerman, Zimmerman. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thanks for Robots and Pencils sponsorship as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ray.
Welcome back. How was vacation? Do you even remember? Do you even remember this?
No. First of all, it's the fastest hour of my week. Every guest we have, I think we could spend a full hour with. And that was just amazing. That was David, Fred, Tracy, just spectacular. Okay, that was episode 245. We've conducted 749 interviews, Ray. We're one shy of 750.
Who's counting?
Which will be next week. 750 interviews. Next week, we have Brian Bellendorf, a general manager of blockchain, healthcare, and identity at Linux Foundation. So we're going to talk about the power of blockchain. We have Jennifer Briscoe, Vice President of Product Development at Oracle. And we have one of our favorite return guests. He's first time Hall of Fame, DisrupTV inductee, Brian Franzo, speaker, change evangelist. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the creator economy, crypto, coins, NFTs, and everything else that's being revolutionized in front of our eye at warp speed. Ray, your closing thoughts on an extraordinary show?
You know, it's been crazy. I have been traveling a lot. I've probably hit something like 30 cities in the last 70 days.
Every day, people asking you about this book. So congratulations.
Thank you. The book's been doing great. We've had some awesome things. If you're reading the book, there's $3 trillion market cap opportunities, $100 billion unicorns in the book. If you figure out how to build one of those, actually, I know how to build one of those. If you're interested, let me know. Some great endorsements of folks. Got Vala Afshar in there as well, of course. But a lot of fun stuff. And and we're doing a couple things. We have a book tour in Cary, North Carolina, August 17th. And I think we're doing one in San Francisco in the Bay Area, 9/9. We'll see how things turn out. But if we'll see you there, it'd be great. So, but hey, thanks everybody.
Amazing commentary from CEO of Zora, CEO of Google Cloud, CEO and founder of Salesforce, Mark Benioff. Ray, this book is a smashing hit. Congratulations.
Hey, thank you so much. But hey, everybody, thanks for being on the show. So, and Vala, it's great to have you back. Really enjoy seeing you here, and every Friday. So join us 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern for Disrupt TV, and of course on most Fridays. So see you all here. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye, everyone.